And we are live. Welcome to Deal Flow Live. This is the show where we look at listings of businesses that are for sale online, meaning businesses that you on the other side of the screen, you watching, you listening, you could go online right now and you could buy these businesses if you so choose. The reason we do this is for two reasons. One, we want you to understand the landscape of what it looks like to buy a business if you're considering doing something like that, doing something crazy like that. We want you to understand how to assess these deals, whether or not they're appropriately priced, whether or not they are a good situation to get into. We also want you to understand, if you're ever selling a business, how to frame your business, how to set it up for sale, what it looks like, what kinds of considerations the person on the other end of the transaction is going through and how they think of these things. I'm Brody Vinson, and
I'm Ryan Santo.
And collectively, we are your hosts. And today, we're going to be looking at service-based businesses in Orlando, specifically mostly home and commercial services. So this involves a lot of different types of businesses, but these are, for most intents and purposes, businesses where someone's coming into your home or into your business to solve some kind of problem. So what do you think about this first business, Ryan? You think we should look at this cleaning business, or this fencing business rather?
Well, let's take a look here. I'm going to pull up this full screen on my...
It's a full-service residential and commercial fencing services in Orlando.
Well, let's see those margins here. So we got an asking price of how much? Is that $430,000?
$430,000 asking price. It's cash flowing $240,000. This immediately looks like a solid deal. It's not by any means like an insanely good deal or anything, but it's a solid deal. What do you think?
I think the numbers check out. You know, as we always say, we like to see those multiples, and anything under $1 million, you're looking at around 2 to 2.5. It fits the bill. I like the sales to the cash flow. It can look a bit odd sometimes to see there's 700 something thousand difference, but that's labor, that's equipment. And if you're still able to keep almost $250,000 after all of that, you're probably doing a very good job of maintaining your expenses.
I agree. Yeah, I think it looks solid as far as the margin, like Ryan was saying there. It's under a 2 times multiple, which for under $500,000 in cash flow is appropriately priced, I would say. If it was under $200,000 in cash flow, then I probably wouldn't want to pay more than like a 1.5 times multiple, even one, something like that. It's a little bit closer to 2, somewhere between 1.5 and 2, but I'd say it's appropriately priced. And let's take a look at the internals of this business a little bit. There are 5 employees, so that's where a lot of the margin is going. We like to see that, because the more employees there are in the business, the less the owner is probably doing. So that means that the business has been set up in a smart way, in the sense that the owner isn't running the entire thing on their own. They've got people that are doing the actual fulfillment of installing these fences. Let's take a look at what kinds of things they do. It's locally owned and operated. They do fence installation and repair for both commercial and residential customers. Doesn't say much about the split between residential and commercial. That's something I would want to know. Why do we like to look at that, Ryan? Why is the split between residential and commercial important?
Well, on the the most obvious is that commercial always pays more. One person's backyard is going to be way less than one person's entire business park. So that's one of the obvious ones. Second off, we do see that there is a trend, and this is not necessarily the case with everything, but the older way of doing things is that a building or a property will establish a contract with a person they like. So you'd have a recurring business, you'd have a guaranteed amount of money. Now, the subscription model, I'll call it, is getting more common in residential. A lot more companies are starting to use it with their more, smaller customer bases. But traditionally speaking, if you're working on larger things, it'll be an annual of, hey, every year we want you to come back and either replace, repair, or redo a section of fence. So usually it means a recurring revenue built into it.
Yeah, and I think that recurring revenue is probably the best point you could have made there. I mean, the more recurring revenue that a business has, if you do buy it, if you get yourself into it, the more security it has for you running it in the future. If they're on contracts with the commercial work, long-term contracts, then you can take over this business and you can reasonably predict what kind of money it's going to make in the future and have a pretty good idea that it's going to continue making you money, which is very important.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see what else. Most residential projects are cash jobs. That's one thing that I don't think have ever talked about on the show, but you see this a lot in these home and commercial services. This is something that would be a point of concern for me. Unless they have some kind of record keeping of all of the cash jobs, this is where it gets really difficult to actually keep track of it. Now, what I have seen is that they don't actually reflect the cash in the cash flow, right? Sometimes if they have a good broker that knows how to educate them, I just talked to a broker the other week that was representing a business where she said, listen, they do a lot of cash jobs, but obviously we couldn't put that in any of the financials because you can't really represent that. So when that's the case, I wouldn't elevate the price because of it. I would just say, you know, as long as they're checking the numbers correctly and like they're not actually putting that cash collection into the cash flow, then you have a better understanding of what the business is. It's probably going to, in reality, make more cash than it's actually portraying, but you can't really stake your claim on that because it's not represented.
Yeah, it's difficult, especially, you know, in that industry, it's fairly common, especially on the larger jobs. You know, we've all seen it, or we all know about someone who has, you know, gone to a construction site, said, hey, I need a fence built, just to one of the people who's doing it. And they go, yeah, on the side, I'll do it for like $500. Stuff like that. I'm not saying this guy does that with private stuff, but I'm saying that is a commonality of it. We do see a little bit of the, similar to resumes when somebody says like they're dependable and they're a fast learner. These kind of nonsense words like, where is it? High demand services. It's a fence. It's more of a case-by-case basis. Great brand recognition. Well, you're never going to tell me if it's not. Everybody thinks they have great brand recognition. You know, stuff like that. It's recession resistant. Not really. I don't think people are going to be like, boy, I always need to have a fence up. It's more of a
I would say recession resistance is something that is partially there, but I would also think about the fact that community, like in a recession, communities might not be growing as fast, and so they might not have as much fences being built. So I would actually argue against the recession resistance as well because of that.
Yeah, there's too many variables with that. I mean, again, low overhead, that's really, I mean, that just means he's running a very good business or she's running a very good business. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to do the same. So, I mean, there's a little bit of bloat there, but I think overall it is a good business. I don't know if I would jump into this as a solo business. Personally, I would rather go the route of getting like, say, some sort of yard maintenance business. And then I would go and buy this business and bolt it on, as we call it. Because to me, I'm going to have much more field advantage, I'll call it, with a business that does something like lawn care or construction or a very specific necessity or more necessity than this. This is an accoutrement. This is something that you say, oh, I noticed your fence was a little weak in that area. We can do fences.
Now, I would say one party to consider this kind of purchase, that this would be a really, really good purchase for someone who's doing new construction and of any kind. If you're doing new construction already, you're probably already dealing with a fence company. Maybe you even buy the one you're already dealing with. But if you're doing new construction, building homes, even if you're just a realtor, this would be a really smart business to own because you're coming directly in contact with potential deals all the time where fences need to be built. So you would want to think about, like, you know, the kind of person that should buy this business is someone who's going to have a lot of opportunities to secure these jobs naturally.
That's a great point too. Realtors, there's a lot of home services business that a good realtor could really clean up on, because if your realtor is good and you're a good realtor, you develop a real deep relationship with people. And, you know, all those magnets and stuff that they leave. And I mean, your mom's a great realtor as well. You know, if she came to one of her clients, said, I sold you this house, I know the fence isn't great and you're going to get that replaced, I have a fencing company, they're likely just to say, yeah, just send me a quote.
Yeah, I trust you. You're my lady. You got me this house. the trust is already there. Why would I not just get my fence built with you?
Yeah, this is a great one for somebody in those industries.
Yeah. So all in all, I think this is a good deal. Like Ryan said, like we kind of alluded to there, the recession resistance, a little bit questionable. I would say this is more recession resistant than a lot of businesses. It's somewhere maybe in the middle. It's not the most recession resistant. It's not as recession resistant as something like plumbing, but it's got some recession resistance. I think ultimately it's going to depend on who you are and what use you would have for it. It was established in 2006, which I really like. It's been around for almost 20 years. We like to see that. All in all, I like this deal in general for the right person. I think this is a good first one.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we're starting off strong today.
Let's look at other stuff. So we've got more construction-based businesses. Let's look at one that's a little bit bigger, maybe. Here is one that's a good bit bigger. What do you think about that? Sheet metal roofing and sheet metal specialist.
Asking price is not listed.
Yeah, let's skip that one. We like to be able to discuss that.
Let's go to that one, the dryer cleaning one, because I think let's go to that one. Yes, I think that's a good point to be made.
I'm gonna say right off the bat, and you're gonna, if you're watching, if you're listening, you're gonna wonder how do I know this already? Well, you know what? I'll tell you how I know. The words right there.
I think that's why
it is a franchise. So let's look at this one. The other like thing that tipped me off though is these very, very round numbers, sales revenue 250 to 500K and cash flow 250 to 500K collectively. That's kind of a tip off if the numbers are that exact and rounded, it's going to be a franchise.
When it looks too good to be true, it's either A, worse than you think, or B, it's a franchise. And we're not anti-franchise here. We just recognize that franchises will use sites like these to kind of pull people in, masquerading as a great deal when really the asking price is usually more of a startup cost and there's no previous revenue that you're inheriting. You have to get all of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is interesting.
It's good to know, though, when you're doing research on your business that you're thinking about buying, if there's a large franchise presence in that industry. Because it's important to understand what your competition is in the landscape.
Yeah. And, depending on what your background is, like if you were trying to get the dryer vent cleaning side of business going in an already established business or add another revenue stream, this actually might make a lot of sense, right? $89,000 to buy in with all the systems and everything. If it starts at $59,000, it actually might make a lot of sense to get you going. But it's good to be able to recognize the difference between an established business and a franchise opportunity, because you're starting from ground zero with a franchise. As proven as it is, it is a franchise. That means that it's not an already established presence in the area. You would have to be starting it from anew.
And there's a lot of rules you got to follow. So that flexibility may not be there as you want it. There may be requirements. Why on the sale of a lot of franchises are they always so discernibly weird with what they're asking and what they're making? Well, the franchise dictates that sale. And at the end of the day, usually the overarching franchise company will tell you if you're allowed to sell it to that person or not.
One thing I will say, because I'm literally in this exact business already, is the startup cost is not that much. All in, you're talking like 35 grand to get like a vehicle, the machines, all the stuff you need, and to get yourself rolling with like enough ads to make that much in cash flow. You're going to be spending about $2,500 a month in ads to get right around that amount of cash flow, if not a little bit more. Not too much more though. Altogether, you could get something like this started for like 3,500 or 35 grand. So they're definitely giving a pretty beefy upcharge to get this started. I think if you're ever considering any franchise, it's really important to look into what the actual startup cost for everything that they're offering is, because in this particular one, I don't know what this franchise is called. I just know who it's listed by. This one, I can tell you, is very, very overpriced. So you're paying for a lot of just support and magic sauce, which in my opinion, there are franchise opportunities out there that don't require that much of a magic sauce payment.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's good to show this one and kind of give an education on it, because I think a lot of people might get, starry eyed when they see $89,000 to make that much. Like, I'll be good in no time. But, we were actually talking at one point with a power wash group that was doing they were doing their territories, and they're a fine company, but one of the things was like, they will help you with your sales for the first 6 months, and after that, that's part of your cost, and then after that, it's just on you. And there really was no more support beyond that, other than like, yeah, these are the marketing tools that we use, and you'll get like a package, like a digital package. But after that point, it's make enough money to make your own Google ads and stuff like that. So you really do take on a lot of costs as that progresses, that they'll kind of front for you.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely something to be aware of. I would really do your due diligence on that. Glad you picked that one out to look at, because it's something that we cover a lot, but always something to be aware of. Now let's look at let's look at a really big one comparatively. So this is a good bit bigger. How big do we want to go here?
We want at least like 6 zeros on the right side of it. Low voltage.
I think easy. Is this, yeah. Interesting. Okay. This is one that I actually inquired about. It's supposed to be off the market. I might have to check back in on this one if it's still showing. Yeah, this is one in town that I actually inquired about for the private equity firm. And it's interesting to see it's still listed, because it was supposed to be closing on Monday, I believe. So maybe it hasn't closed yet.
Could also be just they tied
they
up.
They haven't remembered to take it down or something.
Yeah, it happens.
But yeah, this is one I was very interested in. It's a little bit higher on the multiple level than we're hopefully looking for, I will say. However, from what I remember talking to the broker, they were flexible on terms. I'm not sure if that's shown in here. Owner financing is available. I remember I had discussed that. So that makes a big difference. The fact that the owner is willing to have a little bit of skin in the game and make sure things get handed down correctly. There are also $250,000 worth of FF&E and $100,000 of inventory and stock value included in the asking price. So that's why the multiple's slightly higher.
And that's reasonable. Your price and your FF&E are separate most of the time. So,
and with this business, it's been around for 25 years. There are 13 employees in the business. So in most cases, when that's the case, the owner is probably not going to be doing that much by this point. It's been around long enough, and they've put enough people into the business that it's doing pretty well. This is one that I think is a good, solid business. This is actually very recession proof, I would say.
Yeah, that's a very niche industry. He's clearly put the time into it. I mean, we see on this page a lot of good things that really kind of get you to push past those multiples, because as we stated, multiples are more or less defined by your asking price to cash flow. But like we said, what affects that is FF&E, or the things that you have in your business for your business. In certain cases, real estate, which we actively usually avoid those because they tend to have a lot more steps that we don't want to deal with. And the staffing / operational needs of your business. The less you're involved, the more you can ask, because you're not buying a job, you're buying a cash flowing business essentially with minimal oversight. So you can charge more for somebody to have more free time.
And I want to call out some of the stuff in the write-up of this business. I remember looking through this and just seeing that this hits on all the big points. It specializes in relocating cables for moving departments, technology upgrades, new construction, remodels, government work. A lot of that is very solid, regular, recurring type of business. The government work, the remodels, the new construction, in general, commercial projects. Again, going back to the commercial type of business, just good stuff. They've been in business over 25 years, it said, and they've got a lot of repeat customers. So, I would want to do my due diligence and look into that. Like, what do you mean by repeat customers? Do you mean they worked with you 2 times ever on average, or do you mean they work with you very often? But in general, having those repeat customers is a very good thing if you're taking over this business, because with the right transition, the right introductions and that kind of thing, more than likely that the customers are going to return if you keep the business running smoothly. And they've got a great team that it looks like is in place. So all really good points there that work in favor of this business.
Yeah, and also I just wanted to point out that this is the broker who wrote this. So now, number one, great job for the business owner for having all this stuff ready for the broker. And secondly, great write up on the broker's part. Very informative, very to the point. Not a lot of fluff or excess language here. It's to the point. It's the information. The fact that they have, April 24th has a pipeline of future work. They're, talking about future work, trailing 12-month numbers, and that, sometimes you won't get those until like the third or fourth call, but they're like, we got those on deck and we can give them to you. Like, that's very prepared, very ready to sell. This is clearly a very well put together business that's worth that 1.1 million.
Yeah, the fact that they've got a future pipeline of work of 450,000 is very positive. The fact that they keep track of that to that degree too is great, because it shows that they stay ahead of things. I've got a business on the market right now that I'm helping with that, they're always keeping track of that pipeline, and that comes up a lot in the sales conversation, because it's something that you want to know. If you're buying a business, you buy it for what it's going to do in the future, not just what it's done in the past. So seeing that pipeline is there, that the owner has set it up so that it's not just on the downturn, it's actually got a lot going on going forward, is a really big point.
Okay. Bennett Wicker off of YouTube asked, when rolling up businesses in the same industry, what qualities make them a good fit to be acquired/merged?
That's a great question, Bennett. Let me pin that comment while I'm answering that. So when rolling up businesses in the same industry, what qualities make them a good fit to be acquired or merged? I would say in general, just, if the numbers make sense financially, that's a really big thing. If you can acquire it in a way that allows you to mostly cover the payments of the debt that you're taking on, or the equity that you have to pay back from an investor, depending on how you acquire it, if you can mostly pay that back on a yearly basis with the cash flow of the business, that's a fantastic deal, because you're just growing it faster. I would say the other qualities that make it a really good fit are, does it have something that your current business doesn't have, right? If you are, for example, I'll use the example of what we were talking about before the show with the company we already have under management. If you're a newer company that has really proven yourself with the marketing capabilities, you've got a really strong online presence and brand, lots of reviews, really, really proven system with running ads and doing them profitably, something like that, and you have never hired someone, or you've got a small team, you've got a good team, but you're looking to expand, then something that you don't have is the additional team you're trying to build. And you could go out and try to hire a bunch of new people, or you could go acquire a business that has proven cash flow and is doing the same type of thing, but has, a new set of people to add into the fold. So I would say another quality is, does it have synergy with what you're already doing? Is it going to mesh well? Are the people that are working in it a good cultural fit for what you already have and what you're rolling into? And whatever is your secret sauce to your existing business or your existing holdings, maybe multiple businesses, can those be replicated in this new business? What else would you say, Ryan?
I mean, man, you nailed it on the head there. I mean, like you said, first thing we always look for, are the numbers numbering? Do they make sense? Is this an actual real cash flowing business? And then you also want to focus on, when you're looking, for the acquisition, it's numbers, it's projections, it's all that stuff. But when you're talking about the merger and the roll up is think about a really good meal, or think about what makes a good, I don't know, let's use a burger. You want things that complement each other, that go together, that are functional, that are going to taste delicious when offered together. So when we're looking at stuff, it's like air duct into HVAC, into plumbing, into electrical, into, even roofing, like construction, stuff like that. We're like, if we presented this to somebody and we said, look at this dish we made, all the flavors mix, they all work together. You could have them individually, but together they really bring everything together, and they're a whole package. It's like, wow, that's what I want to buy because that has all the areas and each kind of picks up the other one where one might be slow, the other ones are growing. So that's really what we look for once you get past the is it healthy or not.
And I would also say, even if you're doing businesses that are in the same industry but aren't the exact same industry, maybe it's like the same sub industry. For example, we're talking about like HVAC and adding maybe an electrical company to it, maybe a plumbing company. If it's something that can help you make more money from your existing customers, it's a good business to acquire. And if you're doing one service and you could be doing additional adjacent services, the same types that you would be encountering and seeing and coming across with the same customer, like if you go to fix their AC and you really like have a good technician there that knows their stuff, is quick and prompt and does a great job, and then later they have a plumbing issue and you can also service that same issue and they remember you from that, then you just made a rip off both customers, or you just made a rip from both services from one customer. So the other thing to think about is the other angle of that. If you acquire a business that is in a sub industry where, like, let's say you're an HVAC company that acquires a plumbing company in the same town, then you've got your customer base and they have their customer base. You just acquired a whole new customer base. And it's very often very expensive and difficult to find new clients and customers, right? You have to pay for advertising. You have to win their business and win their trust. Whereas if you acquire that customer relationship by buying another business, you might be able to do other services with them just out of virtue of having that relationship.
All good points. I mean, if you serve, especially in the home service industry, we find this over and over and over again. If you're prompt, if you got very personable technicians, and the job gets done well, and there's proper communication even before and after the job, that person's going to be somebody. If they say, "Oh, if you ever need plumbing, here's the card of my buddy," their sign off after that interaction is going to be worth more than, yeah, we called the other guy a couple times, they were fine, but this really great person told us about his friend or his other company that he works with. We'll try them next because we have no relationship to the other people, because nobody that we've seen, at least, nobody wants to build relationships as much with their customers as we do with our businesses. And bringing that to other industries is a very powerful tool.
I agree. So with that being said, hopefully that answers your question, Bennett. Let us know in the comments if you have other questions or if there's other things that you would want to know about this topic, but great question. So moving on to the next business, let's look at another one kind of in that related industry. We looked at fencing so far. We looked at dryer vent cleaning. We looked at
got that electrical.
Let's look at something else kind of interesting. Here's an interesting one. What do you think about a gutter business?
I think I know of quite a few people who have made a lot of money doing gutters because I don't know why or how, but gutters always seem to be something that people complain about and they're never happy with, and they're always causing problems, and they're getting new ones, or they're trying to find ways to not have to break them. So this is probably a pretty good business.
It's it's something that's always going to be going on. Like, you always have to get your gutters cleaned, so it's got that recession resistance. It's installation and repair service, which I like. You're getting multiple stabs at that, multiple bites out of the apple, so to speak. You might be able to install someone's new gutters, but also repair them later. So you could keep your customers for a while. They've got a large pipeline of incoming leads each week. This is a point I would want to key in on. If I was trying to find out more about this business, I would want to ask, what do you mean incoming leads each week? How does that work?
Yeah.
I would like numbers. I would like method of lead acquisition as well.
Mhm.
What is that? Ads? Is that outreach of some kind? How does that work? Is that all referrals? Is that all organic leads coming in? How does that actually work? 9 employees. I like that. This is a very new business. This is a point I'm going to take off from this business because they've only been around since 2021. They're doing remarkably well for having only been around since 2021.
Mhm.
So obviously they're doing something right. However, one thing that I would say is probably likely is that you've probably seen some very quick growth in those years. And I will also say that the margins are not altogether that great on this. They're a little low.
Hmm.
What do you think?
I think, like you said, it's the biggest ping for me is the years in business. There's nothing wrong with being successful right out the gate. However, as we've said multiple times, those first 5 years are critical and those first 10 are important. Critical meaning, most go out of business after that. 10 being if you can make it the 10 and be profitable, you're good. So I wouldn't want to touch this unless they'd been around for a minimum 5. I wouldn't even talk to them a minimum of 5 years. And not to say that they don't have a great business, but I want to see that year over year growth and see how they handle it. I'd also be very interested as to why are you selling? It's very new. This seems to be good. Why would you get out of this? And I think, like to your point, gutters, I would say if we're gonna go and give them a tier rank, I would say gutters are A tier. They're A tier because they are important to the point of, don't want your house to flood or your yard to be flooded. So that's very important. They can be managed by you with difficulty. It's not a technical job, but you do have to get dirty and do it. So it's not like it's a specialty, but it's frequently something that people have to get replaced, repaired, or redone. So I think it's A tier in that respect. Whereas the air duct cleaning, I think that'd go into. I'd say that's also A tier. I think the low voltage is S tier though.
What makes you say that?
The S tier because I can't replace my own low voltage. Yes. Should I? Absolutely not, for my health and safety. And there's also just a likelihood that I mess it up. So to me, it doesn't. Recession resistance is now, government work. That's going to make you real hard to mess up in a recession because they constantly spend money. So
one thing about the government, they're great at spending money.
They do great work at spending money. Yeah. As
they really know how to cut a check.
Government contracting companies will say they are great at spending money.
They really know how to cut a check.
So when I'm looking at a business and I'm trying to put it on a tier list, that would be, this is why it's A tier. Could somebody do it? Yes. The bigger the house, the bigger the check, the less likely they are to do it, though. So that's really where you're going to want to focus your target markets.
Completely agreed. So altogether on this one, we haven't talked about the numbers much, but not too bad numbers wise. They're a little bit above a 2x multiple at $314,000 in cash flow. That's a solid deal, especially given that they are including about $175,000 of furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So, if those numbers check out, that is a pretty good deal. I would want to know more about this. They're not really giving much as far as, seller will work with the buyer to help familiarize them with the business. That doesn't tell me much. Like, we'll work with them. I would want to know more about what kind of transition time and terms they're open to. I like that owner financing is available.
Mm-hmm.
I would want to understand, what does that actually look like? And, I would want to know what the employees are actually doing. Like, what is the actual setup? They really don't give much in here. It says multiple salespeople, multiple installation teams. So I do like that they have that in place. The biggest thing I will call out on here that I actually really like now that I'm looking at it is the multiple salespeople means that, you got rainmakers in the business, even without the owner. A lot of times, especially for smaller businesses, the owner is the main person that's actually causing the sales, and they can be difficult to replace. And if you lose them when you buy it, then it might be difficult to keep the sales coming in. So having multiple salespeople that are most likely going to stay in from after the sale is actually a really big deal.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know we're talking about numbers and the multiples and all that. FF&E checks out, looks all nice. I don't trust the numbers until I see that 5 years, and that's just a personal thing with me. If you told me this was going for 5 or 6 years, I'd be very interested to talk more. I'd even say this was a better bolt-on business, especially if you owned one of those, like we said, one of those complementaries. Are you a construction owner? Do you do siding on houses? Are you a roofer? Here you go. You just added to your bottom line. But I mean, like you said, the staff's great. The layout looks really good. Why are you calling it? Why are you done after 3 years? What about 3 years made you say, I'm done. I'm bored?
I will say a lot of times when you're selling a business, you look at what are the last 3 years of financials to be able to represent it. So maybe they went in with a very concrete plan. They said, "Hey, I'm going to build this thing, sell it in 3 years." Could be. But I would definitely want to check and make sure that they're not over representing that cash flow there, because you do see that pretty commonly.
The old, yes, 2024 were projected 314, but we've seen some of those where it's like, I don't think you're gonna make it, bud.
Yeah, and you can't go off of we're projected to do this.
Definitely not when you're spending this type of cash.
So altogether, what grade would you give this deal?
This listing, I'm gonna give it
I think we should start giving the deals a grade.
Yeah, I think we can give industries grade. I think we can give deals grade. I'm gonna be pretty harsh on this one. I'm gonna give it a C.
Okay.
Because it is untested, unproven. The listing didn't detail enough out in the way of numbers. I didn't get a clear idea of how many teams, what are the team sizes. I know there's 9 people. How many are sales? Is there an office manager? I know the owner does logistics. What the heck else? So I think for the lack of clarity, the lack of longevity, and just the very vague terms and owner thing, it's going to have to be a C from me.
I'll give it a C plus. The big thing I'm going to knock it on is the age. It just hasn't been around that long. It's not that proven. The big points I will give it are that it seems like they've done a good job building out the team. They've got a good team in place, and it is doing well. Another thing I will knock it on is it's low margin. You don't want to ride on low margins because it can be dangerous. Altogether, yeah, I'll give it a C plus.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think if you were buying this as a bolt-on, let's say you owned a business that would have complemented, I think you're up to a B.
Sure, I would say so as well. And that's a great point. Like this could be not a suitable purchase for a certain buyer, but a suitable purchase for another buyer. For someone who has a long history, who maybe has a 5-10-year-old gutter business already, this is probably a really good purchase. You're just acquiring an existing team to add on to your team that has proven systems and a great team. And it doesn't really matter that it hasn't been around that long, because you've already proven that you can keep the business around that long.
That is a great point. If you buy a business that's doing well and you're finding success in it, instead of trying to go out and franchise or just trying to buy up more office spaces and stuff, maybe just go down the road to the guy who's been doing it for 50, 40 years and say, "Hey, are you looking to get out? I'd love to take over what you got here." It's a lot less headache. And if the books are good, it's a much easier transition to expand yourself.
I would agree. Well, that being said, we've covered a lot of businesses today. What have been your main takeaways from the ones that we've covered today?
I think my main takeaway was that there's a lot of great businesses out there, and even the ones that maybe weren't good, just individual businesses by our standards, are great depending on the specific circumstances that you might be experiencing. What about you, Brody? What did you take away from today and the experience that we had?
I love that takeaway, by the way. My biggest takeaway was look for signs of a good team. We saw some businesses in here that were listed that didn't give a lot of clarity as to, what the team looked like. And I'll expand my point by saying, if this is the angle we don't talk about as much, but it's very important. If you're someone who's trying to sell a business, if you were listing your business, you should give some good clarity in the listing as to what the team looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I saw that last one and I saw they have salespeople in place, they have installation teams in place, they have office management in place, that all shows me, you know what, I'm probably not going to have to do much as the owner, which is what I want. So represent your team properly. And, looking at these listings can be a great way. Like if you have a small gutter business, maybe like a fourth of the size of this, or you're just starting out or something, looking at these listings in general just could be a good way for you to see what it looks like to build up to the level you want to be at. Right?
Oh, yeah.
If you're trying to build to that level and you see, hey, this is what one that's at that level looks like, then all of a sudden you've got a better idea of what your team needs to look like too. And it might help you identify the next couple moves.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned from other people's businesses that they're selling in kind of a modeling yourself after certain things that are already that are in more higher valued businesses. What are they doing to get that multiple up? But I since that about wraps it us for up to wow, tongue tie. Um, well, I think one thing I want to say before we go is Brody, you have a lot going on right now, and I think there's a lot of cool stuff happening. We always say at the end of the show, if you want to, call in questions, you want to ask about it. Hey, did we look at your listing? Did you want to talk more about the listing that we saw? You should message myself or Brody either on LinkedIn, or Brody, you want to give them all your socials?
Yeah, and I'll say one thing as we're wrapping up here, the people that are watching and viewing and listening right now, let us know if you got any final questions, or let us know if you had a thought that we didn't mention about the businesses we were looking at so far. But if you're trying to find me, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm on YouTube. Pretty much anywhere you can find me at Brody Vincent or BrodyVincent.io on Instagram, on all those platforms. Message me your questions that you want us to answer. We do this every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Next week, we should have our first guest coming on. Assuming he is able to come on as we discussed next week. Our next guest is actually the manager of a fund here locally in town that focuses more on startups. So it's going to be a little bit of a unique angle next week. We're going to be talking from the perspective of startups and someone who's seen a lot of startups either make or break it. It's a different model that he looks at. Usually he's not looking for as established of businesses. So he sees a lot more failure of businesses when he's looking at them, and he has to look at them with a little bit more of a critical eye sometimes. So be a unique angle. We'll be doing the same thing we usually do, but have another perspective to share, and someone who's been in the investing space for a long time, who's here in town. And we're really excited to have that.
It's going to be a great show next week. And we actually have a couple more guests lined up, but we'll talk more about that another time. So I think that's been us at Deal Flow Live. I've been Ryan Santo.
And I've been Brody Vincent.
And we'll see you next time.
And you've been looking at Deal Flow.